And we're going to talk about In Search of the Lost Calendar. And I've shown this chart many times before already, that Satan works to infiltrate, deceive, and destroy anything that Yah blesses or sanctifies. His Son, His name, His word of truth, His people, His creation, His land, and also His Sabbath and His feast. These are things that Yah has sanctified, has blessed, and these are targets from Satan that he wants to destroy. And he told us that the calendar would be lost. Daniel, he said that someone would show up and speak great words against the Most High and wear out the saints of the Most High and think to change times and laws. So Daniel told us something would happen with the times and laws. And they will forget all my Torah and all my commandments and all my judgments and will go astray as the new months and Sabbaths and festivals and jubilees and ordinances. And the children of Israel will forget and not find the path of the years, and they will go wrong. And his time and his feast have been shot at many times by the adversary, many, many times, among all the other things. And so we're going to start looking at this. And I bring up the lunar calendar here as we're looking at trying to figure out where the truth is. And the lunar calendar was used in pre-Gregorian civilizations that were led by the pagan religious systems, Babylon, ancient Egypt up to a time, ancient Greece and Rome. The Eastern religions, the Hindus, the Buddhists, it's still used by the Buddhists for their religious dates, the year of the dragon and the rat. Still used by the Hindus for their religious dates. Used today by Islam and the official calendar of Saudi Arabia. And a lunar calendar is also used by modern Judaism. And so looking at some of these, in quick summary, the Islamic calendar is a lunar one. It's 10 days shorter than the solar calendar and contains no intercalation. So that means that the years get shorter every year. And the Greeks did the same type of month, a 12-month lunar year without intercalary days or months. And so their years would drift. And the Hindu calendars maintained the integrity of the lunar month, but inserted months when they felt they were needed at different times. The Buddhists did sort of the same thing, and they continued to do that for their religious feast. The Far Eastern countries used those lunar calendars until they switched the Gregorian to maintain contact with the Western world for business. In recent history, it was the 19th and the 20th century when they switched. So very recently did they switch from their lunar calendars. Ancient Egypt at first had a lunar calendar, but then they moved to a solar calendar of 365 days, of 12 months of 30 days each, and 5 intercalary days. And there's a really interesting story with that. Ancient Rome, I think most people maybe know about the Julian calendar, but before that, about 750 BC, there was the first king of Rome was Romulus, and he set up this first calendar. And this is sort of that's a calendar that they found that was dated from 84 to 55 BC that is evidence of this ancient calendar. And so they had 10 lunar months originally and an uncounted winter season. So they kept a lunar year for 10 months and then the winter season. And the second Roman king added the next 2 months. At some point between 750 and 50 BC, the number of days in the months changed. The beginning of the year was moved into the winter because it originally started in the spring, and they added an intercalary date. Now, Julius Caesar knew that things were moving around too much, and he wanted a consistent, solid empire where everybody would be on the right schedule, on his schedule. And he developed what was called the Julian calendar and started it in January 1st, 45 BC, and it had 365 days, one day of a leap year every 4 years, which is really close to what we have today. And then it was just slightly off, just so slightly. And then Pope Gregory the 13th, in about 1528 or so, proclaimed the Gregorian calendar, which updated the leap years to more accurately track the solar years. And this is the world's current standard civil calendar. So what we have today is our current calendar that we all keep is based originally on a Roman calendar that started on observance of the lunar days and got manipulated through the years to more align with the solar year that we have when the sun revolves around the sun. And this is just a quick chart of the Roman calendar changes. You can see how some of the days line up with the English names. The last 5th through the 10th month at the end are saying that it was the 5th month of the year, which correlates to the beginning of the spring when the original Roman calendar started. And I find that pretty interesting. But we won't spend much time on that. So all of this, though, comes from Babylon. All of the calendars, all the lunar calendars, because as we show in these past teachings, before the Tower of Babel, they were all conspiring against the Most High, and they were rebelling. Nimrod, Gilgamesh was rebelling, and he was the king of the earth. And Yah came down and dispersed them, dispersed their languages, but they still knew what they were doing, and they were keeping this lunar calendar before them. And so the calendar split to all the peoples of the world in different languages, and so after time it started changing a little bit, but the basis is the same. 12 lunar months, and beginning with the crescent moon sighted, and that's as a general statement. And this is in some of the cuneiform tablets that are in ancient Sumeria. So Sumerian tablets that show this from 3,500 to 4,000 years ago. And it was all going back to Nana, which was a pagan god, a moon god, and the goddess of wisdom, which is sort of similar to the snakes that we saw on the Greek and the Roman statues. That was also the gods of wisdom underneath the guise of the sun god. So it's all pagan wrapped up in the solar and the moon and the serpent. Why do we care about Babylon, though? Why do we care about this? Well, we're told to flee out of the midst of Babylon and deliver every man his soul. Don't get cut off in her iniquity. This is the time of Yah's vengeance. And those words ring true to me today. We are coming up at the time on his vengeance for the world. And he's telling us to flee Babylon in all its ways. Deliver yourself, Zion, from those that dwell with the daughter of Babylon. For Babylon the Great is falling and has become the habitations of devils all around us. And the nations are drunk off the wine of the wrath of her fornications. Come out of her, my people, that you are not partakers of her sins, and that you may not receive of her plagues, for her sins have reached unto heaven, and Yah has remembered her iniquities. That's from Revelation. That was a voice came out of heaven. And so I showed the Babylon calendar again on the far left, and those are the names of the Babylonian months, the ancient Babylonian month names. Nisanu, Aru, Samanu, Dumuzu or Tammuz, Abu, and you go down the line, and they all worshipped a pagan god or associated with a pagan god each month. And the interesting thing I see is when I look at the current Jewish calendar, their month names line up with the Babylonian month names. And look at the left-hand column and the right-hand column, and they match up. The names match up. And so there's a tie there. There's a tie right there. Tammuz is one of the months in the Hebrew calendar, and that's one of the main gods of Babylon, which we've discussed before. Now, Ramadan is an Islam festival day that they keep, and it begins on a certain day of their year, but it moves all through the year. So this year, it's in early April. 10 years ago, it was in August. So in another 10 years, it would be in the middle of winter. It never falls on the same day of the year. And that's no problem to them. It's just a day picked out of the year. But for the children of Israel, that would be a big problem if their year moved around, because we have to stay in line with the harvests, the feasts. And it says that we'll forget all of the Torah and all the commandments, all the judgments, and go astray as to the new months and festivals and jubilees and ordinances. And they will go astray of these past of the years and forget these months. And he declares it unto us, it's not of my own devising, that this is written on the heavenly tablets, the division of days is ordinances. This is his calendar, his schedule, his times. Lest they forget the feast of the covenant and walk according to the feast of the Gentiles after their error and ignorance. For there will be those who assuredly make observations of the moon, how it disturbs the season and comes in from year to year 10 days too soon. And when they do that, when they follow that calendar, they'll make an abominable day, the day of testimony, an unclean day, a feast day, and confound everything up. They'll go wrong. And he wants us to worship him according to the days that he has specified. And he told us to lose a calendar, that we would lose a calendar, and thus we have. but we make attempts to understand what his time frame is, what his timeline is. So, I command and testify to you that you may testify to them. And these words rang true to me as I read these. That Yah was commanding to Moses to testify to him, that he may testify to us. And then I heard these words, and now I am testifying to you, that the children will disturb them and not make the year 364 days and go wrong. So I've been reading a lot from Jubilees here so far. And there might be discussion whether Jubilees is an inspired book or not. Consider this. The Qumran caves were discovered in 1947 and highly looked at through from 1947 to 56, and they still look through them. In those first 10 years, in the first 5 caves of Qumran, they found approximately 15 scrolls of the Book of Jubilees, all written in Hebrew, and the dating of those was about 100 BC on each of them. That's a large number of scrolls of one book. That was more than almost any other book of the Old Testament, excluding Psalms, Deuteronomy, Isaiah, Exodus, and Genesis in that order. So there were more books of Jubilees in the Qumran caves than all of the prophets except for Isaiah, more than Proverbs, and even more than 2 books of the Torah. More than Leviticus, more than Numbers. Now, we don't just blindly follow the scrolls and the people in that cave, but we pay attention to those types of data and know that they were reading this book and they felt it was set apart. Ethiopia has an Orthodox religion, and they have the Book of Jubilees as part of their canon, and they've kept it for millennia. And a comparison of the Qumran text of Jubilees compares pretty much accurately and literalistic in the same translation that the scrolls are. The scrolls of Jubilee match what is in Jubilees of the Ethiopic scripture. So that's telling we have a consistent word. And these are Jewish rabbis on the calendar. They count the months by the moon. The moon travels more slowly than the sun. At the end of 12 months, the year of the moon is, they say 10 to 11 days shorter than the year of the sun, every day losing a full month. This produces a special problem for the religious calendar because Passover has to be celebrated right after the vernal equinox for the harvest of the barley crop, the first fruits of the barley crop. And the teachers of the Talmud made the adjustment by adding 7 leap months called Adar months, thereby, quote unquote, ingeniously devised a perpetual calendar that would keep the holidays in the approximate season for which they were originally conceived. So they were originally conceived and then they updated it. So that almost sounds as if they bettered what the creator of the heavens and the universe did. And we know that no man is equal to Yah. And we trust Yah over man. Now we know Passover is the first month of the year. It says so in Exodus. This month shall be to you the beginning of months. It's the first month of the year to you. It's on the 10th day of this month that we start preparing for Passover. That's coming soon. Observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover unto Yah. You'll have a feast to me 3 times a year in the time appointed in the month of Abib for Passover. And we know it's in the spring as a second witness because of Exodus 9. They were plagues that were hail was raining upon the land of Egypt, and the barley was in the ear, meaning it was starting to become mature, and it was destroyed. And the wheat and the rye were not smitten because they were not grown up. They were too tender, and so the hail would just bend them over and they'd bend back up. But the stalks of the barley were mature enough that would break them and destroy them. And so we know when the barley crop's harvest, it's at the very beginning of the spring. Just a picture of a Abib grain that's almost mature. It's got the ear of the grain. The stalk is turning from the dark green towards the amber or brown that you'd expect. And so we just saw through the scripture that the year starts in the spring. The month of Abib, the first month of the calendar, is in the spring. And as I look at the modern calendar that Israel keeps, their first month is Tishri, and it's in September and October. it's completely upside down from what scriptures tell us. And this is all coming from the religious leaders that were coming up in those days and times 2,000 years ago and have continued to rule after the destruction of Jerusalem. We went through this in a couple of messages where the Levitical priesthood, the anointed priesthood, was removed by Antiochus, and then they couldn't completely get back in through the Hasmoneans or the Maccabees, and then the Romans came and the Pharisees ruled. And we know how much our Messiah loves everybody. Loves everybody. He was angry in scriptures about 6 times, and most of the times, other than the 2 overturning of the money tables in the temples, which still indirectly went back to the Pharisees that allowed it. He spoke these words to the Pharisees, the religious leaders of these days, not the people, but the leaders, the religious leaders. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you compass land and sea to make one disciple of yourself, and when he is made, you make him twice the child of hell than you are. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you're like whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful, but are within full of dead men's bones, and unclean. You appear righteous unto men, but within you're full of hypocrisy and iniquity. Generation of vipers, being evil, how can you speak good things? You're of your father, Satan. How can you escape the damnation of hell? And he says in Revelations, these people are the synagogue or children of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Now, those are strong words, but I didn't speak them. Messiah spoke these words. Our Savior spoke them. The creator of our heavens and universe spoke these words. Are we going to listen to our creator? Do we believe in the scriptures? If Genesis speaks to us, do we listen to Genesis when it's his inspired word? Yah spoke to Moses and he wrote the words down. Messiah spoke to John in Revelation. He wrote the words down. We are to listen to him above all else. Do we believe the inspired word? We do. Let me show you. Through the scriptures, and I'm not using any other books other than our inspired words of Yah, that the lunar calendar cannot be truth. Genesis 7, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, all the fountains of the great deep were broken up. They opened. The windows of the heavens were opened. The rains came, and the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days. And then Jubilee says, at the beginning of the 7th month, the waters started to decline. And in Genesis 8, as it continues, the waters were returning off the earth continually. And after the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated enough that the ark rested on the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month. And so that's telling us from the beginning of the flood starting to when the ark touched land, it was 5 months to the day. The 17th day of the 2nd month to the 17th day of the 7th month. And it says twice in Genesis 7 and 8 that that's after 150 days. So 150 days divided by 5 months, 30 days. 30 days a month. What about a second witness, though? We've seen some places where the word has gotten corrupted through the years, right? We've seen that. We need a second witness. Well, let's look at the Septuagint for these very same verses, which was translated before the Pharisees and the Sadducees came into context. In Genesis 7, it says, in the 600th year of the life of Noah, in the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, which is a little bit different, the waters were raised over the earth for 150 days after the abysses were opened. And then in Genesis 8, it says, the waters subsided and went off the earth, and after 150 days, the waters were diminished to the point where the ark rested on land on the 7th month, on the 27th day of the month. Now, we do have a discrepancy there. It says this 27th day in Jubilees versus the 17th day in our King James Version and the other translations. But in both versions of the word, it has 5 months from day X to 5 months later, the same day. 5 months exactly. And it says with those 5 months exactly, it's 150 days. Did everybody see that? Okay. Any lunar calendar fails this Genesis flood test. That's 2 witnesses to his inspired word. A lunar calendar is based on the revelation of the moon, which is 29 and a half days on average. So your months are either going to be 29 or 30 days to make a 29 and a half day. In mathematical terms, this is a limit problem, a limit equation. It's impossible to ever get 150 days in 5 lunar months because your average is 29 and a half days, and it says it's got to be 30. So if you count 5 lunar months, it's about 147 days. Sometimes in different conditions, it can be 148. It'll never be 150. Let's show you. So I pulled this off of a popular messianic site. This is a lunar calendar they keep. And it starts with a new moon right there on the 1st of Aviv. And so we go to the 2nd month. And we're quoting Genesis here, tracking Genesis in the King James from the 17th day of the 2nd month to the 17th day of the 7th month. And it's going to be 150 days. That's what Genesis said. That's what our inspired word said. So let's count on the calendar. We start on the 17th day of the month, on the 2nd month, as you can see. And you start counting the days until the end of that month. And the end of the month is, we have 13 days from the 17th to the 30th. Okay? And double check me to make sure that I'm doing this right. So we had day 13 from the previous month, and we start at day 14, and we start counting the days, 1 day for every day of this lunar calendar. This month has 29 days, and so we counted from 14, and I counted 42 at the end of this month. Does this look right? I've got 1 day in every month. Every day of this month I have an incrementing day. So we're at 42, and I'm going to go to the next month, the 4th month. So the next day will be day 43. And I keep counting up. And this lunar month, again, has 29 days. So we count from 43, 1 day for every day of the month that is there, and to day 71 at the end of this 4th lunar month. So the next month's going to have day 72. And we keep counting 1 day for every day of the month until we get to the last day of the month, which is a 29-day month again. And we get to day 100. Next month's going to be 101. And we keep counting till we get to the end of this lunar month, which is day 30. And double check me, make sure I'm not missing any days here. I'm not trying to do any sleight of hand. I've triple checked this, but I could still be wrong. Okay, so the next day of this next month, which is the 7th month, which is the one we're interested in, is going to start with day 131. And there's day 131, and we go to day 17, which is what Genesis said when the ark touched land. And if you count up, and we just counted them all, you get to 147. And you can pick any lunar calendar that you have. Go to the government of Israel and pick their calendar, pick any Messianic or Hebrew roots or any calendar, and you can do it for any day. You can do it for the first of the day to the first of the day 5 months later, or the 15th to the 15th. It doesn't matter. It's mathematically impossible to meet the Genesis test with a lunar calendar. And these are the rest of the months there, just to make sure that, I'm not trying to pull anything over that's on the website. How about a second witness? Wouldn't that be great? Let's look at the Great Tribulation, Revelation. And the set-apart city will be tread under 42 months. And I will give power to my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,203 score days, 1,260 days. So 42 months, let's do some math. Divided by 12, that's 3.5 years. And that sort of sounds like a great tribulation period to me. And 1,260 days. Now, if you divide, or if you multiply a lunar calendar times the 42 months, you come up with 1,239 days. About 21 days too short of what it says in Revelation for the Great Tribulation, for the number of days that it put in black and white in front of us. If you have a 30-day calendar times 42 months, it hits 1260 on the money. Genesis, if you had a 30-day month, it hit 150 days on the money for 5 months. And here for 42 months with a 30-day month, it hits 1,260 days on the money, which meets Scripture. Now, Daniel 7 has a time, times, and dividing of time, which is another witness to the Great Tribulation period. And a time is a year, times is 2 years. Half, or the dividing of the time, is half a year. You put 1 year, 2 years, and half years, you've got 3.5 years, 42 months, another witness to 1,260 days right there. From Daniel 7 to Revelation 11. Revelation 12, a third witness. It says that the woman will go to the wilderness, to a place prepared by Yah, and she will be fed 1,260 days while the great city is getting trodden under by the Gentiles. Great tribulation. To be in sync with how Yah calculates time, we have to have a calendar with 30 days every month. It has to be that way. Genesis says it. The Great Tribulation says it from Revelation and Daniel. And it's not my devising. I didn't do this. The book is written on the heavenly tablets. This is his calendar, his times, his feasts, his universe. We're just seeing it. Now I'm just going to read this. This is how somebody has to keep their birthday based on Talmud for a certain day. Based on a line of Mishnah declaring that Purim must be celebrated in Adar 2 in a leap year, Adar 1 is considered the extra month. As a result, someone born in Adar during a non-leap year would celebrate their birthday in Adar 2 during a leap year. However, someone born during either Adar and a leap year will celebrate their birthday during Adar and a non-leap year, except that someone born on 30 Adar 1 will celebrate their birthday on 1 Nisan in a non-leap year, because Adar in a non-leap year only has 29 days. Wouldn't you like to have that birthday? So I've read that 6 times at least, and I can't wrap my head around it. So the creator of the heaven and universe does not want us to have our head spinning on easy things. So we can see this twisting happening around. When men get involved, and it doesn't matter who the men are, when they get into positions of leadership, power corrupts. Power corrupts. It doesn't matter who it is. We see it all over today. We've seen it all over in antiquity and history. Corruption of the inspired word, creating stories that tug on sentiment and stories for calendars, using scriptures out of context to bolster the narrative, and then widespread acceptance among the leaders of the media, etc., which is the backup snare, which I mentioned, which I jumped out of a Christian church and I jumped into a Messianic that had a lunar calendar. That was my backup snare. I was in it for 3 years. I thought this was heresy until I saw Genesis and Revelation, and my mathematics kicked in and it doesn't work. So there are 2 different words in the Old Testament. One is Hodesh for month, and one is Yerach for moon. And we don't have a pure language. Hebrew is no longer a pure language. It's been twisted and mangled through the years. Some on accident, some probably quite on purpose. He says he will return the people to a pure language that they will call in the name of Yah to serve him with one consent. And so we know a pure language from Yah is going to be one thing for each. One word is going to mean one type of thing and not multiple different things. And this language, Hebrew, was the tongue of creation because it had ceased. Open Abraham's mouth and his ears, that the language will be revealed that had ceased from the mouths of the children of the men from the overthrow of Babel. They all spoke one language before Babel was overthrew. That language was Hebrew. Then nobody spoke it. God took it away. And then he began to speak in Hebrew, the angel did to Abraham, the tongue of the creation. The tongue of the creation. And he took the books of his fathers. Who is the books of his fathers? Abraham. This is before Moses. Whose books of his fathers? His forefathers was Enoch, one of them, Noah. Not too many back then. And these were written in Hebrew, and he started learning them. And so all these places where our Bibles are translating new moons for times, when you go back and look at the root word in Greek or Hebrew, the word underneath the translation is month. No Neomenia is month in Greek, and that's the word that Paul speaks of in Colossians 2:16. Let no man judge you in meat, drink, respect of the holy day or new moon, which is Neomenia, which is month in Greek. And you can go to any modern translator and put it in either way, and it'll show you this. And you can put in new moon, and it'll give you a completely word down at the bottom. And it's a feminine case instead of a masculine case. It's just a different word. It's not in the Greek underneath our Bibles. And all the places in the Old Testament where in 1 Samuel and 2 Kings and Isaiah and Ezekiel, where it talks about tomorrow is a new moon, the root word under there, the Hebrew word is Hodesh, which is month. It doesn't even have a new in there. It just says month, Hodesh. And all the places. And the translations, they get changed sometimes, even like Psalm 81:3, where it says, blow up the trumpet in the new moon in the time appointed on our solemn feast day. Now, if you look at the straight Hebrew there, and you pull it out, that verse actually says something closer to blow the shofar in the month appointed for our feast day. Still talking about the same thing, but you can see the flowery word text in the King James and some mistranslations. If you look at other translations of scriptures, many of the other ones have Hodesh translated correctly as month. The Literal Standard Version, Young's Literal Standard, the Douay Rhymes, the Brenton Septuagint translation. Others, that's all would fit on that chart. Some will look at Psalm 89 and say it will be established forever as the moon and as a faithful witness in heaven, Salah. If you look at Psalms 89 in whole context, the whole chapter, it's about your seed and your throne will I glorify forever. And your seed will endure forever and his throne established forever and as the faithful witness in heaven, as I see the sun and the moon is forever to me, so will his throne be established forever. Revelation, time is kept in the New Jerusalem. Everybody knows that. We're going to be celebrating Shabbats and feasts in the New Jerusalem. The first heaven and the first earth were passed away. Everything we see and know is gone. The heavens, the earth is all wiped away, just like that. And he brings a new heaven and earth down. And the city has no need of the sun, neither the moon. The glory of El lights it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. There shall be no night there. But then in Isaiah 66, talking about the same thing, it says, for as the new heavens and the new earth, from one new moon, quote unquote, to the next, and from one Sabbath to another. The word is Hodesh there. There's no moon in the New Jerusalem. We just read that in Revelation. But your King James says it's a moon. There's no night. There's no moon. Clearly, timekeeping in New Jerusalem will not involve a moon because it's passed away. And the light of the Lamb, the glory of the Father, is the light that's needed for the timekeeping, for the feast, his appointed times, his Shabbats. Now, some people have heard about how they kept the new moon. Two witnesses would see the new moon. They'd go to the temple, yell up to the high priest. The priest would say, come up hither. They'd second witness to the new moon. The high priest would say, yes, the new moon has started, so it's the new month. They would light a fire on the Temple Mount, and then all the people on all the mountains of Israel would light their fires that they're waiting to see to signal to everybody in the whole nation that it's the new month. What could be wrong with that story? It sounds pretty good. Let's look at it. Acts 2, when the day of Shavuot was fully come, there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men of every nation under earth. They came together and heard the apostles that had just gotten the set-apart spirit filled with them, speaking their own tongues, and said, how could this be? There were men from Parthians, Medes, Elamites, dwellers in Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, Asia, Phrygia, Egypt, Libya near Cyrene, all the way from Rome, Crete in the middle of the ocean, the Mediterranean Sea, and Arabians. Now, some of them were local. Obviously, Jerusalem's a major town, so there were some dwelling there for their businesses, but some came just for the feasts. This is where they came from. This is everything that's in Acts 2, where they came from. How did they know when the first feast was? Because it moves around on a lunar calendar. Can they just walk away? Can they give a month and guess? Are they waiting for the fires that's described for us in tradition? Well, so if you light a fire and eat around Jerusalem, maybe, but can they light fires across the desert to get to Media and Elam? No, those are just little mini establishments of Judea. There's just Bedouins and other people there. How about all the way to Rome? Can you light a fire across the Mediterranean Sea? How would they know? They wouldn't. They wouldn't. And would the emperor of Rome allow people to start lighting fires on his mountains to set aside a different calendar than what he has established for his emperor, his empire? He'd probably say, hey, I'd like to meet with those guys. Tell them to meet me in the Colosseum. I'm going to be in my box, and I want them to talk first to the lions and see if the lions agree. That's a threat to his authority as the emperor of Rome if you're starting to take away his calendar. So there had to be a different way. And this right here on the right, I showed you how Ramadan changes. It backs about 10 days a month every year. 10 years, it's 4 months sooner. Well, for a lunar calendar, it jumps around. So Passover this year's on their calendar is the 22nd of April. Last year's 3/27, March 27, and it just moves around in this month because the lunar year is 10 days shorter, and then you add an extra month to make up for it. So the feasts, if you read Leviticus 23, these are my feasts, thus says Yah. It's his time, it's his feast, it's his appointments. Passover is one of his feasts. An appointment, a feast, is a moed. In Hebrew, it's defined as an appointment, a fixed time, a season, or a feast. Now, if the President of the United States calls you up and says, hey, I want to meet with you, and pick your favorite president so you want to go. It could be Washington, Lincoln, anybody. But if your favorite president says, hey, I want to meet with you, come meet me on the 18th of October at 12 o'clock, and we're going to have a 15-minute lunch. You're going to say, that's the president. That's his time. That's his clock. I'm going to show up on his clock. I'm not going to listen to my friends. Well, maybe he's doing something different. Let me talk to you about maybe the calendar, and I'll look here and verify it. No, you're going to make sure you're walking under the authority of that president to make sure you're there to meet him at the time he told you. Is not our Heavenly Father greater than a president? Another way, and this is what got me for so long, they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, but of that day and hour knows no man, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. They're talking about the day of trumpets. And we know that the day of trumpets is when he comes down and gathers his saints up to the glory of heaven. And so that first day of the month, if you go by the story that we just talked about, 2 witnesses for the moon, and they look up and they proclaim the month and distribute it, it could be on either day. It could be the first day they see it. If the clouds are there and they don't see it, well, they go to the next day and they assume it's there. But that's a day and hour per their definition that no man knows. Now again, though, you're getting man involved in the middle of the Creator's time. So just remember that. And let me tell you what a day and a time and a time and an hour that no man knows really talks about. And this is the glory. But of that day and hour knows no man, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only, right here. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying, and giving marriage. And there's your clue. Then, and this is right after, this is Matthew 24, and turn the page to Matthew 25:1. And then he goes straight into the parable of the 10 virgins, the 10 maidens. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. They didn't know when the bridegroom was coming back. And at midnight there was a cry made, behold, the bridegroom comes, go out to meet him. So think about this. This is an ancient Israel marriage covenant that he's talking about, both in Matthew 24 and 25. And a marriage covenant was when a groom met a lady that he was interested in, they'd agree on a dowry settlement. And if the father of the bride agreed that he would allow that man to marry his wife and agreed on the dowry, he said, yes, you can marry my daughter. And then that groom would go back to his home, his country, wherever it was, and prepare his place for his bride. prepare a house. Do I not go and prepare a place for you, he says, for us. There, in my Father's house there are many mansions. He goes to his Father's house, his Father's land, as this groom goes to his Father's land and prepares a house for the bride. Now, the father's honor is at stake here. He's the patriarch of the family. So if the groom does a shoddy job and brings the bride back to a hut, it's on the father's head and not the groom's. So the father of the groom is going to make 100% sure that that groom has done everything proper to bring that bride back in honor and glory. And so, no one knows when the groom will come for the bride, not the bride's father, not even the groom. It's only when the father has accepted what the groom has done for his bride to prepare for them. And then he'll say, okay, you can go get your bride now. And you see that in the parable of the virgins. And that's what he's talking about when no man knows the time of the hour. Only my Father, who is the Father of me as the groom, coming for you, the bride. And we have lost the calendar, so we really don't know exactly what day it is. He prophesied we lose these times, and thus we have. So there's been, I've talked about Sunday religion and the crimes of the Catholic Church and the empire. And so I'm no respecter of persons, but I read his word and I speak what I see as the truth. And there's a researcher on the Dead Sea Scrolls that spent 30 years. And this is some of her words, which, from her perspective, reading everything that she has seen, the rabbis completed a restructuring of Jewish thought and practice following the destruction of the temple and reinvented the world, where the old world was the Levitical priesthood that got destroyed, along with Jerusalem and the temple at the end. And then they came in afterwards and started regrouping as the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And then they started to add their words to the words of the Most High, which we know we're not supposed to. Do not take away any words that I've commanded, Deuteronomy 4:2. And yet the excluded text, these people in the Qumran caves believed in some of these other works, Jubilees and some others, as inspired as Judges or Daniel. But these texts were excluded by this congregation of Pharisees in the 300s, 400s. They were abandoned but excised as malignant growths. Whoever reads them, one rabbi said, of this process will have no place in the world to come. He's threatening somebody that if you read these things, you're going to be excluded from eternity. That's a threat. That's what I call a threat. That's not free will. What's the motivation? The short reason for the canon-apocrypha divide was a dispute over the calendar. If you start looking at some of these books, many of these are calendar heavy. They talk about dates. They talk about how time moves. It's a power struggle. An emerging class of rabbis from the Pharisees espoused a different narrative which gave them human reason and laws, their human reason and laws, a role in shaping their religion, when we are supposed to have no words to shape the words of Yahweh. We're supposed to take them as verbatim. They favored a lunar calendar because then they start talking, they take the power away from the priests and they start doing it of their own. It's their own calendar. The month would now not commence according to a pre-calculated calendar given to us by Yah for eternity, but by mortals scanning the sky for the new moon, perhaps disagreeing about the sighting among themselves, and perhaps even erring among themselves. So if the months don't begin with the sighting of a new moon, the day, and I taught this at the beginning of the year, does not either. And there's about 12 different places in Scripture that shows that the day starts with the sun. There's darkness on the first and second and third day. The earth is created. There's still darkness. And then day shows up, right? Genesis 1:3. And then there's even, and then there's night. So they say, the rabbis say that the even starts the first day. But that's saying that the day that was already just there isn't a day. Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense that there's day there without it being a day. The first day is when the light appears, the glory of Yah. walking on the Sea of Galilee. It's the same thing. He had just fed 5,000 people. With women and children, it could have been 20. That's a long day. But now even has come, his disciples went down into the sea. He was up in the mountain, and it was dark. And Messiah wouldn't come down to them, and they rowed away. And it was nighttime when they got stuck in the billowing sea, and he walked out on the Sea of Galilee to meet them. 25 or 30 furlongs, which is about 3 miles into the sea. That's a good ways into it. He said, "It is I, be not afraid." They brought him into the boat, and then just like that, they're at the other side. Then it says, the day following, when the people that stood on the other side of the sea were looking for Messiah, and they knew there was only one boat there, and the disciples had left, and Messiah wasn't with them. So it's the next morning. It's the day following, right at sunrise. Matthew 28, at the end of the Sabbath, at the very end of the night of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn towards the first day of the week, the delineation of one day to another, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the grave of Messiah. That tells you exactly when the day starts and ends. Right at the beginning of the dawn is when the day starts. There's other historic references to this. There's all the scholars, there's many places where it says there can be no doubt that the pre-exilic times, which is before Babylon, the Israelites reckon the day from morning to morning. And when they returned to Palestine after the Babylonian exile, they started bringing back with them the Babylonian astrology and way of reckoning of time. So, Jeremiah 16 says, we have inherited lies, and we've seen them. O Yah, my strength, my fortress, and my refuge, in the day of affliction of where we are now, the Gentiles shall come unto you from the ends of the earth and say, surely our fathers have inherited lies and vanities and things there is no profit. And I say, teach me your way, Yah, that I will walk in your truth. Unite my fear to fear your name and walk in your ways. The lunar calendar, it was started in Babylon. It's taken all the religions. We looked at Genesis and Revelation, counted day by day, and it wouldn't work. That was the scripture. That was inspired word of Yah, and a lunar calendar would not work according to scripture. The Jewish people said it was ingeniously updated by the rabbis to stay somewhat aligned to the harvest seasons. That says that Yah didn't do a good enough job, and I disagree with that. The calendar replacement was accomplished as part of a means to change over from the Levitical priesthood unto a new religion, which is here today. And then sunset is not supported by scripture either. It's supported by a sunrise at the start of the day with about a dozen references. Of 2 or 3 I just showed you, and you can go look at the rest in the teaching I did at the beginning of the year. When does Sabbath begin? I command and testify you that you may listen to them. Testify. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it set apart. Why am I spending so much time on this? It affects the Sabbath day too. If we start at sunset, you're starting on a day that he didn't sanctify. I want to seek his truth. I want to be as in line with him as I can. Sanctify my Sabbaths. They are a sign between me and you. Remember, it's the signet ring. It's one of the marks of Yah that he's given us. It's important. And the days when we are on days that aren't sanctified, he calls them abominable days, unclean days. It's not my words. He sanctifies certain days for certain events, and we're trying to get onto his calendar and come out of her, my people, that you, my people, may not be partakers of her sins, and that you may not receive of her plagues. And so we've left Babylon in many ways. We've come out to the wilderness, the mountains. We've assembled, but we still have to be on the lookout and listen for the truth with open hearts, that we can hear each other in these days, even when somebody does not speak your doctrine initially, that you can hear your brother speak and maybe walk away with a disagreement as the Father leads you. But this is what I see in the scriptures, and I was called to testify this to you today.